All right, we're recorded. Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, the 20th of July, and we are talking all about the book of Joshua. We are going to start, please God, with chapter 20, I think. And this is going to be our final talk of Israel's geography. Because now, all the tribes have their land. All the tribes are settled. They even have their spiritual center in Shiloh. And there's only one group of people that remain homeless. That people is or are the Levites. As we know, the Levites have no portion in the land. What that really means is they have no agriculture. They have no major share of land, but they can't be homeless, because what good would it be to have a whole tribe of homeless folks? So the tribes, or not the tribe, the Levites are given a whole series of cities across the land of Israel. And their role was to be influencers, to be influential, and to teach, and to inspire. And so if you have all the people that are supposed to be teaching isolated and segregated in a different region, that would be pretty unproductive. And so by design, the Levites are dispersed throughout the land of Israel. And today we're going to share the screen. We'll see the text of the book of Joshua. We'll see some maps that were found on the internet. And we'll also take a look at Google Maps. And this is my pledge to you. We've been doing this a lot. It's been a very different style than we are familiar with. And it's also a different style than we will be doing going forward, because today is the final day of Israel's geography.
Okay. Rabbi.
Yes, Lynn.
You're probably not going to like my question, but I have to ask it anyway. I have a friend who takes Bible study, not in the Jewish religion.
Okay.
And next year they are going to be covering Joshua and the Book of Kings, as well as other things. What would they glean from the Book of Joshua if they're not Jews?
They'll read the text and they'll probably study a lot of things that are very much like what we're going to be studying. Probably they'll be lacking some of the context that we might be able to present over here. But
why would they be interested in the settlement of the Jews?
Oh, that's a general question about why people of the Christian faith are interested in what they call the New Testament and we call the Bible. I don't know exactly why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to cast aspersions on their value of.
No, I was just curious why they would even study.
I mean, I'll tell you probably what they say is that you can't. They say something very terrible, and again, I'm not pro confronting or debating Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Not something that I am in favor of. Not most likely, their belief is that God chose the Jewish people and gave them the land of Israel, and then they have a terrible belief which the Jews don't accept, which is that at a certain point God rejects the Jewish people, and all of those ideas and promises are then conferred on those who accept a certain human being.
Okay. All right. I got it.
They're going to look at this as the build up towards their faith. But we very strongly reject that on very, very clear.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my question. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's probably. So let's take a look at the Levite, the city. Yeah. Now, as Jews, this is meaningful because the land of Israel remains our homeland.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, of course, none of us on this chat live in Israel. Sheila, did you ever live in Israel?
Only for a short period.
But your husband was Israeli and he lived in Israel.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And so none of us live in Israel, but all of us know that it is our land and we're connected there, and we have visited. We hope to visit again. And you know what? If all trouble, everything else, who knows what, we would go to Israel as our homeland and as a holy place where we connect on a spiritual level. And so Israel is something that is our birthright, even if we don't live there, and even if we don't speak Hebrew, and even if it's been a while since we're there. And so for us, we're utterly fascinated to see our long-standing and deep, enduring connection to the land all the way from the time of Joshua until today. And it's also interesting for that very reason, when we take a look at a city and say, oh, that city, I was there. And we've actually found things that connect us to that land. So for us, this is very interesting. And it's also interesting because we study the Bible. There's 5 books of Moses, and there's so much anticipation and excitement and about the land, and for us to finally see the narrative and the story of us reaching there is just really exciting. And so I think that's why we might find deep appreciation for the subject. So I'm going to share the screen. Chapter 20. And even before we start, I want to share with you, where are we now? I got to figure out how to spin the map. Hold on, let's see. Oh, that's how we do it. We're now upside down. You see Aman? That's Jordan. Let's see if they'll help me out over here. Come on. This is the challenge of playing with applications that you aren't. Hey. Up. All right. Anyways, we're almost there. We're almost home. Anyone recognize this? All right. Here we are. Israel, Dead Sea, Kinneret, or the Sea of Galilee. We don't see it because we're pretty zoomed out, but right all over here, this is the Jordan River and the Jordan River banks. And a lot of the cities we've talked of and the cities we will discuss today are in this map. And there's Hebron, Beersheba, Dimona, Yerucham. These are the southern places in what we call the Negev. This is Netiv. Anyways, okay, we'll get down to business. So you have this map. We've got this map, which is a pretty rudimentary. Let me see if I can zoom out. There we go. And so here, this is a pretty rough, but a nice approximate portrayal of the division of the land of Israel and the cities that we're going to read. And then if you don't like that map, here's another map that I also found online that we'll use as a resource. So let's go. Let's do this final geography lesson of Israel. The Lord spoke to Joshua and told him, speak to the Israelites. Oh, I forgot one important detail. 6 of the Levite towns were very important because they were not just Levite towns. We discussed this before. You'll remember this. But they were also cities of refuge. Lynn, do you remember what a city of refuge was for?
Yes, it was if someone committed a crime that was not punishable by death, they went there to rehabilitate before going out to society.
Yes, so if a person committed manslaughter, which was an unintentional murder,
right?
Well, they're not going to get the death penalty for a mistake, but they did take someone's life, and that's pretty severe. And so they would have a city of refuge. 6 cities of refuge existed in the land of Israel. And all those 6 cities of refuge also had primary inhabitants, permanent inhabitants, and they were Levites. Let's see. The Lord said to Joshua, speak to the Israelites. Designate the cities of refuge about which I commanded you through Moses. So this is old news. We read this in the Bible. And Moses himself selects 3 cities of refuge before he dies, because those were 3 cities of refuge on the east of the Jordan, in the area that the 2.5 tribes end up settling. What was the value? What was the purpose of these cities? To which a manslayer who kills a person by mistake, which is unintentionally, may flee. They shall serve as a refuge from the blood avenger. The family is going to be pretty mad at that person. They might want to take revenge, but if you're in the city of refuge, you are protected.
And you are rehabilitated.
One of those cities, present himself at the city gates, plead his case before the elders of that city. They shall admit him into the city and give him a place in which to live among them. Should the family pursue him, they shall not hand the manslayer over to him. Killed another person without intent, had not been an enemy of the person. He shall live in that city until he can stand trial. And assuming that he's found to have done so unintentionally, he remains there until the death of the high priest who is in office at the time. Thereafter, the manslayer may go home to his own town, the town from which he fled. So this is a detail which I don't recall if we mentioned, but now that I have Gedalia here, he's gonna like this, or maybe he won't like it. How long would the murderer have to stay in exile in this rehabilitative process. They would have to stay there as long as the high priest,
Wow.
who was in office at the time of the murder, is still alive.
But that was kind of tangible because the high priest could have been young,
High
right?
priest could have been young,
Right.
could have been old. I
Right.
think high priests generally were a little bit on the older side because
Oh,
you aren't born like the big guy,
the big macha, right?
big macher. And I saw an interesting explanation. What's the connection between a high priest and a murderer? So I saw a high priest pray for the Jewish people and pray on Yom Kippur. And he should have prayed this didn't happen. And so although of course, you can't prevent everything from happening, but there's an association between the high priest. And this is to also show that in the Jewish belief, there's a certain invisible spiritual connectivity that binds us all. And so when one person makes a mistake, it affects society and affects all of us. And the high priest being the spiritual leader of the people, there's a connection that shows how we're all united. And we all suffer to some extent when a crime is committed or a loss, a person is taken from us. And so that's why we wait till. So which cities are those to be? What are the 6 towns? You might not like that explanation, but that's what I got for you.
No, so what guarantee does this accidental manslaughter person have if he returns to his old town that somebody's not going to murder him?
That's a good question.
What
That's a good
guarantee?
question. I'll tell you what it really is. It's like, when is the statute of limitations? There's a crime and there's a statute of limitations.
Mhm.
A person does something when they're in college and they're 93 years old. Can you take them to task, or has the statute of limitations passed?
Right, I see. Okay.
It's a big question, by the way, because we have people that were Nazis, and in their youth they did terrible atrocities, and we want to make sure that they're tried and prosecuted, even if they're in their upper advanced age.
Right, right.
But on the flip side, there is a statute of limitation. And so what we're saying is, you made a mistake, a considerable passage of time, which the assumption is it's going to be a good number of years until the high priest passes. And so there's a certain amount of time, and then the statute of limitation passes, and the person can now be rehabilitated.
All right. Okay.
And again, this is not intentional murder. Intentional murder is a different story. Here we're talking about.
I'm sorry. How about refugee cities for leprosauri? What was this?
So that's not. These were not cities for sick. No. That's a good question. So let's see what the 6 cities were. So they set aside Kedesh in the hill country of Naphtali in the Galilee. So up north, they had the city of Kedesh. Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim. Shechem in modern day Israel is many times referred to by its Arabic name, Nablus. And Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah. So let's think again. 3 cities: Kedesh in the north, Shechem towards the center, and Hebron, which is the hill country, which was towards the south. Because as you may recall, Judah was the southernmost tribe. Now let's take a peek at the map. You've got, let's see if this map helps us out over here. Kedesh, here, Kedesh, you see where right. Kedesh is over there, 1. Shechem is over here. Hebron is over here. So you got 1, 2, 3. They're not perfectly distributed, but they are approximately distributed. Now let's do this. Well, actually, I don't know what modern day Kedesh is, but so we'll start with what I do know. Okay. I don't know if I can draw lines in this map. I don't think we can. Let's see. So let's do this.
But Nablus right now is Arab.
Nablus is a Palestinian. It's Palestinian.
Authority, whatever.
Yeah, let's look at this. Nablus. And did they find us Nablus? Yes, they did. So this is just a different application. Google Maps instead of Google Earth. I'm sorry for confusing everybody over here. All right, here we go. So we're going to draw a line, measure a distance to Nablus. So they were 48, almost 50 miles apart.
And this is Nablus and this is Nablus.
No.
Nablus
This is Hebron. This is Hebron.
Hebron. Okay.
Although Why aren't they showing? Oh, here, yeah, Hebron.
Hebron.
Hebron to Shechem, modern day Nablus. I'm sorry, I know I keep on zooming out and in and out. Come on, show me Nablus on the map.
Sama, Nablus.
Just to point out over here, you see Shiloh? Remember that city?
Right.
That is where the tabernacle was.
Mm-hmm.
Gilgal is down here. Jericho, Gilgal. So again, this is all familiar territory now that we've been students of the Bible. But now we got to do something like this. Kedesh. I'm gonna do a Google search. Modern day Kedesh in Israel. Let's see what they tell us. Google. Again, Google's not always the best. Okay, the ruins of the ancient Canaanite city Kedesh is 3 kilometers northeast of Kibbutz Malkia.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna go look for Kibbutz Malkia.
There, I just saw something right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is Malkia, and let's look for Kedesh.
Mm-hmm.
Is there the ruins of Kedesh? Let's look. Is there Kedesh somewhere?
No, I don't see it.
Near Malkia.
All right, let's do this then. Shalmer tells me we're doing Kedesh.
Are they still calling it that name? Oh, here. There it is.
All right, check this out. We found Kedesh. Kedesh today is just a site where they're of an ancient city. You see Tel Kadesh. Tel Kadesh is the ancient mound associated with the city of Kadesh. And hold on, let's do this. Let's keep. Oh, they lost my. No, they didn't. And so now we're going to click on Kadesh and check this out. So here is,
60 miles, 50 miles.
okay, this is, here, let's zoom out now. Hebron on the bottom, 50 miles north, we've got
Nablus.
Nablus or Shechem, and then about 100 miles north, all the way in the very northern tip of what is modern day Israel, we have Kedesh. Kedesh is really in the upper Galilee. If you're looking for another city, those that know Israel, Kiryat Shemona and Metula are to the
Yeah.
north.
Now it's in Metula.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
but they were
Sheila?
very far away from Shiloh, where the tabernacle was.
Correct. So why, that's a good question. So why would the cities of refuge be so far from the tabernacle?
Oh, these are the cities of refuge. Okay.
So basically we need to have well distributed in Israel places for an unintentional murder to run.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's what these are. Okay.
And so you have Hebron, Shechem or Nablus, and Kedesh in the north. Now, if you look here, Google is going to show us that Kedesh is an ancient archaeological site. And so I don't even think this is from biblical times. I don't know. But we'll just take a look at some pictures. This looks like a tomb of sorts. Ruins, pretty flowers.
It's like the camera usher, what I'm telling you about.
You see there are pillars from times past. Actually, we're going to read about 2 famous individuals who are buried in this region or close by. These look like Roman columns. Right, that's a Roman style design. But you know who lived in this region? One of the most famous Jewish women heroes or heroines to live, Deborah the prophetess, and her husband Barak are buried. Barak was a famous general from the tribe of Naphtali, and we're going to read about him soon. And so they are buried in this region too, but now we're just looking at different pictures, many of them similar, of ruins in that region. And so now what we need to do is zoom in and here. So here's Kadesh, and then here is Tel Kadesh, which is the archaeological sites. And so I just want to show you something here. This is Tel Kadesh. This is apparently where the ancient digs are. This is the tomb of Deborah and Barak, two famous important leaders of the Jewish people that we're going to be reading out in the book of Shoftim, in the book of Judges. Then here is a tomb associated with two of the 12 sons of Jacob, Asher and Naphtali, two of the sons of Jacob, whose remains were brought to Israel, and this is connected with their tomb. So now let's zoom in further. Shammai, welcome to the studio.
But Rabbi, I
Yes.
got a little confused with this whole thing, because first you were talking about the Levites, all right, and where they were located. Then you were talking about the places of refuge. So I'm confused.
Lynn, as always, you ask the best questions.
Well, I'm confused between the Levites and the cities of refuge and what
So
the
let me ask
connection
the
is.
question,
I'm
Rabbi.
confused,
Are we talking about cities of refuge,
right?
cities of Levites?
Yeah, I mean, what are we talking about? Because it's confusing.
Could I challenge you to propose an answer to that question?
Well, perhaps the Levites were involved in the rehabilitation of the people.
Fantastic. So I'm going to tell you, it's even better than that. The cities of refuge needed to have primary citizens besides for murderers. Now, what kind of citizen do you want to have being a good influence?
Oh, I see. You want to have good citizens who can,
Well, hopefully most Levites were good citizens. Nothing's guaranteed.
no, but you want somebody who could maybe educate them or,
Yes, so the primary citizens, the
okay.
primary residents of the cities of refuge were Levites.
okay, so thank you. You answered my question because I got a little confused with
No, it is
that.
confusing. And now while we're talking, I'm just trying to find some pictures. Check this out. Can you imagine in this area today, if you'll go there, you'll see livestock, oxen grazing
Mhm.
on the hills. These pictures are from 2017, close enough. And you see the slightly
Yeah.
hill, you see all of the farms. It's a very picturesque, solitary,
Uh-huh.
spacious area. But under the ground of where you are, look, you see even in the Google Maps, you see all of these farms. But over here, this is an ancient archaeological site with great historic.
Okay,
Significant.
Rabbi. But then how did the Levites take care of the temple, which was their job if they lived so far away from it, the tabernacle?
Brilliant. So the Levites were actually distributed all across the land of Israel.
Okay,
And they would have to travel a few times a year to
Mhm.
Jerusalem to serve in the temple. But the
Okay.
rest of the year, they would be spread out living lives like everyone else.
mhm.
But their
And then
job
they would
was
go
to
back.
spiritually.
Okay.
So I'm really glad that we asked these questions. And I'm also
Mm-hmm.
really glad that we had the opportunity to take a survey of the 3 cities of refuge and see how they're dispersed up and down the land of Israel. Just for a moment, going
I
back
understand now. Yeah.
to this map for a moment. You have Kadesh over here. You have Shechem over here.
Mm-hmm.
Hebron over here.
Mm-hmm.
You could draw that line. 1, 2, 3. These are cities of refuge. Today, it's not that important, but in ancient times, it was very important. And they actually had road signs saying, closest city of refuge, 30 kilometers that away. And people would have to know where to go if they, God forbid, got into an accident. They would stay until the demise.
Right.
All right, let's go. Let's see some more Israel geography. And again, my pledge to you, this is the final week of this. So get ready for some things changing up next week. So they set aside Kadesh, Shechem, Hebron.
Mm-hmm.
Across the Jordan, east of Jericho, they had 3 other cities. So this is to the east. Bezer or Betzer
Mm-hmm.
was in the region of Reuben. Ramoth, which was in Gilead, sometimes called Ramoth Gilad, and this is the tribe of Gad. And Golan in the region of Bashan for the tribe of Manasseh. Now these cities, being that they're not in present-day Israel, they are in Jordan and maybe in Syria. So I'm going to rely, at least initially, on our image here. And let's look for those cities.
And who lived in those cities?
Folks from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, Menashe, and they
Okay,
also
so
had
they
a whole
had
bunch
nothing
of,
to do with the cities of refuge, correct?
oh, these were also, so basically the way it worked, let me
Yeah.
show you. Here is a picture of ancient biblical Israel. The
Uh-huh.
biblical Israel that was promised to the Israelites is
Right.
on the left-hand side of the map. This Jordan cuts this portion in half. This is the biblical Israel. This is the region that 2.5 tribes requested from Moses
Right.
to be allowed to remain. And so Moses and Joshua say 6 cities of refuge, 3 to the west of the Jordan.
I see. Okay, thank you. Good.
And now we're identifying the cities of refuge that are east of the Jordan.
Right,
So we
thanks.
have Golan,
Mm-hmm.
Betzer, and Ramoth Gilead. So look, Golan, Ramoth Gilead, they're not so far apart, and then Betzer in the south. So each tribe, 3 tribes were distributed. Each tribe had a city of refuge in its territory. Now you'll ask the question, there are 12 tribes. 2.5 tribes get 3 cities, and 9.5 tribes get only 3 cities. Why wasn't it equal distribution? And here is the answer. You see this area to the right side of the map, the east of the Jordan? It was like the Wild West. It was much more expansive, broad, a lot of things could happen in anonymity, and so it was more of a dangerous, rugged area. And so there needed to be more cities of refuge for a smaller population because they were spread out and distributed. And it's kind of like the question of how representation works in Washington. Is it based on the size of the population, or is it based on the geography and the division of the states? And the answer is that both are factors. And so because of the expansive nature of this territory, there was actually their own 3.
Right.
All right, let's jump back into the Bible and do a little more. These were towns designed for all the Israelites and for aliens residing in them, to which anyone who killed a person unintentionally might flee and not die by the hand of the blood avengers. That's chapter 20. So chapter 20, a very short chapter, 9 verses, tells us the story of the 6 cities of refuge, 3 east of the Jordan, 3 west of the Jordan, famous cities, Kedesh, Shechem, Hebron, Betzer, Golan, and Ramoth Gilead. 6 towns. You know, I'm not even going to try, although as I do that, I'm not going to try to identify precisely what those cities were. But what I can show you is that we're talking about this region. Let's just do one thing. Let's just Google as an experiment, Ramoth Gilead. It's not going to be in Google Maps, but let's give it a try. Nice, they couldn't find it.
What about Golan?
No, Golan, the problem
They'll
is,
come up with Golan
this is
Heights.
not the Golan Heights.
Right.
Yeah, because these areas,
The other
these
side,
cities are
east-
exclusively,
east of Jordan.
yeah, we're talking about in Jordan. So they're
Right.
exclusively known by their Jordanian names. And Jordan, maybe Syria, maybe the top one was in Syria. But anyways, okay, now let's go back into it. Chapter 21. The heads of the ancestral houses of the Levites approached the priests and Joshua, son of Nun, and all of the tribes and said, hey, they spoke to them at Shiloh. Shiloh is the capital. I want to remind you guys of something. You're forgetting something. The Lord commanded through Moses that we be given towns to live in. Where's our towns? You want us to be homeless? Okay, they didn't say it like that. We need to have towns to allow for us and our livestock to be settled. So the Israelites, in accordance with the Lord's command, assigned to the Levites out of their own portions in the following towns with their pastors. So every tribe had to volunteer and say, okay, Levites, here is your Levite quarters. This is where you can stay. And every tribe ultimately wants to have a Levite because it's good for business.
So they gave him some land, even though they didn't own
Every
it,
tribe
right?
gave up a city or 2 or 3.
But they
or
didn't
more.
own it. The Levites didn't own the land, did they?
The Levites had ownership of the cities, but
Oh,
not.
they did?
Yeah. So let's
Oh.
take a look. And so the Israelites shared. They gave up the following towns. Well, it looks like there was a process of a lottery. the first lot among the Levites fell to the Kehathites clan. So let me explain to you. The Levites are divided in 3 families. Who made this up? I didn't. Levi, the son of Jacob, had 3 sons. And so, although it was one tribe, they are subdivided, just like every tribe has some subdivisions. They're subdivided into 3. Their names were Gershon, Kehath, or Kehath, and Merari. Not Ferrari, but Merari. And so the first group that ends up getting the first dibs or first to be settled is Kehath. Now Kehath has, or Kehath, has another distinction that I know my friend Gedalia is going to appreciate. Who belong to the family of Kehath? Also the priests, the Kohens. So to the descendants of the tribe of Aaron, there fell by lot 13 towns. So the priests get 13 towns from the tribes of Judah, Simon, and Benjamin, which means that the priests are predominantly distributed to the center and the south of Israel, because Judah is to the south. Simon, if you recall, is interdispersed among Judah, and then Benjamin is just to the north of Judah, and that's approximately where Jerusalem is, if you may recall.
That's not inside.
So that's where the priests, 13 towns. The remaining Kehathites, they received 10 towns, and those were from the tribes of Ephraim, the tribe of Dan, and the tribe of Manasseh. So the rest of the Kehathites have land. I know I don't have the division based on the tribes, but in the center of Israel. In the center of Israel. So the family of Kehath is established, the priests mostly towards the south and the beginning of the center, the Kehathites, central Israel. Now, the Gershonites, I said there's Gershon, Kehath, and Merari. Kehath is taken care of. Now we got to talk about Gershon. The Gershonites also have lots, and they received 13 towns from the tribes of Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and Manasseh and Bashan. So they receive portions towards the north, center north, and east. So they end up, oh, this is a good map, I'm sorry. So let's go back for a moment. Judah, Benjamin, that's where Ephraim, that's where the Kohens are. Then the rest of the Kehathites were the rest of Manasseh, Ephraim, that's over here. Now the Gershonites, if you call Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun, and East Naphtali. So we're talking about up here. So south, center, north, and a little bit to the east. Again, I'll just review it one more time. The Gershonites, they get Issachar, Asher, and Naphtali. Let's look. Issachar, Asher, and Naphtali. So we're talking about the north. Merarites, where did the Merari go? 12 towns from the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Gad, and Zebulun. Let's take a look. Gad, Reuben, and Zebulun. So they're all the way east and a little bit of Zebulun. So Merari has the furthest, they're the most far out. They're the most far out. The Israelites assigned those towns with their pasture by lot to the Levites, as the Lord had commanded through Moses. Now is where we're going to get a long shopping list of names. It's 210. Let's see. Okay. So from the tribes of the Judites and the Simonites, they gave the following towns, which went to the Aaronites, to the descendants of Aaron, the Kehathites, which mean priests. Here we go. Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron. So Hebron, which was a Levite city and a city of refuge, ends up being a place of the Kohens. And they received the city and the pastures around it. And by the way, you're wondering who Arba was? Arba was the father of very large folks who no longer live there, but they had originally come from there. They gave the field and the villages of the town of Caleb, son of Yefuneh, as his holding. For the descendants of Aaron the priest, they were assigned Hebron, Libnah, Jatir, Eshtemoa, Cholon. Anyone ever heard of Holon in Israel? I lived there for a year.
Yeah,
Let's take a look on our modern day Israel map. It's going to be close to Rishon. There we go. Hold on.
it's
See that?
closer to Netzion.
What were you doing there for you?
In Yeshiva. Cholon is next to Rishon LeZion. It's near Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
And that's one of the Kohen cities.
Mm-hmm.
Debir, which we've seen previously. Utah or Judah, not like a D. Judah or Utah. Beth Shemesh. Anyone ever heard of Beth Shemesh? Beth Shemesh is one of the famous small cities, but has a very large population of American emigres that have moved to Beit Shemesh. Beit Shemesh is not far from Jerusalem. So now I got to get my bearings for a moment and find Beit Shemesh. There we go. Right here. Beit Shemesh. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a popular city. Many Americans that you'll meet have family in Beit Shemesh. That was another one of the cities. Holon, Debir, Judah, Beit Shemesh. 9 towns from these 3 tribes. From the tribe of Benjamin, they received Gibeon and Geba, or Geva. Then Anatot, or Anathoth, and Almon, 4 towns. All in all, the priests of Aaron, 13 tribes, including some very prestigious cities like Hebron, Holon, Almon, Anatot, Gibeon, Geva, Utah, Beit Shemesh, Debir, Libnah, Hebron. We're talking about well-known, famous cities. The priests were well taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
As for the other clan of the Kehathites, they received cities from Ephraim. What cities did they receive? Shechem. So the Kehathites live in the city of refuge of Shechem and Gezer. By the way, let's now look for Gezer. Gezer is a famous city because there are famous archaeological finds associated with Gezer. So here is Gezer. I think we looked at it recently once. And if you'll notice, let's look for Tel Gezer. We see it? There we go. Tel Gezer. This is the site of an important archaeological dig. Some of the finds in Gezer predate Israelite settlement to the Canaanites and those that lived previously. And the special Israelite sites.
Oh.
Including here, let's take a look. See this?
Uh-huh.
Ancient city, the ancient dig of Gezer.
I'm in a class. Yeah, thank you, bye.
Anyways, we'll have to study it more at length at another time, God willing, as we study through the Bible. But here, another picture, or video actually, where you can see there's a lot going on over here. Look at that. See those columns, thick walls, entranceways. Again, I'm not an archaeologist. I can't quite read what this is, but what's evident is we're talking about a magnificent, solid structure, and that's in Gezer. So again, we're just reading that. That's one of the towns where the Kehathites lived, in the town of Ephraim. I'm just telling you that there's some very important archaeological finds. There's also some important documents. There's what's known as the Gezer calendar.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes,
I'm filled with questions today.
that's good. You got
All
it.
right, as you talk about the archaeological sites, are they still there now?
Yes.
Okay.
So next time, God willing, COVID is all finished and everything, we can go take a trip to Israel. We can tour all the archaeological sites, and there is so much to see. And a lot of these sites are off the beaten path because they can't glamorize and you can't build a fancy visitor center at every site. But we're talking about a place in Israel with 4,000-year-old archaeological stuff. And that's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's I don't want to say it's the middle of nowhere, but it's like far from any of like the famous, I guess it's somewhere near Rehovot, but it's not, you gotta go there because you intend to go there. And I'll tell you something else. You're not far from Modi'in and Maccabim Re'ut, which are other very important historic sites. And so, it's impossible to tackle everything. But there's Tel Gezer. Let's see a little more.
What was the Gezer calendar?
It's a document about ways to track the sun. It's an interesting document.
And they found that there in a dig?
It's associated with that area, yeah. They also got a place called Kivtzayim and Beit Choron, which we've seen, 4 towns. From the tribe of Dan, they got Eltekeh. That sounds like a Yiddish name, no? Eltekeh,
Altakaka?
Eltekeh, and Gibatzon or Gibatzon.
Right.
Then they got Ayalon and Gat Rimon, 4 towns, and Tanach and Gat Rimon. So the Kathites get 10 cities. The Gershonites, they get Golan and Bashan, and Thera, 2 towns, and Kishion and Dobrach, and Yarmouth and Ganim. So basically, what turns out is like this. It seems like the Levites got almost all of the important cities in Israel, understanding that the average Jew wasn't looking to live in a city. They had their own portion of the land that they operated, they worked, they grew, right? They lived off the land. And so who's going to live in the cities? The people that had a communal role, just like until recent times, right? The people that were working the land lived out in farms, that were there for trade or, to be in. And so that's what we're seeing over here, where almost every well-known famous city is being given to the Levites and to the priests. And it's because the Jewish folks were spread all over. And when they needed to trade or they had a question, they wanted to connect to their roots, well, they would seek out. They go to the local town, they trade their grain, they chat with the Levite, they would do some business, whatever else you do, and you lived in, so that's important to consider. From the tribe of Asher, they got Mishal and Avdon, Chelkat, Rehov. From the tribe of Naphtali, the Gershonites receive Kedesh, right? That's one of the cities of refuge. Hamat Dor, Kartan, all they get 13 towns. And the tribe of the Merarites, they get from Zebulun, Yokneam. We looked at this last week, remember? Yokneam, Karta, they get Dimna, Nachal, that was 4 towns. Then from the tribe of Reuben, again, also east of the Jordan, they get Betzer. Betzer was one of the cities of refuge, I believe. They get Jachaz, Kedemot, Mepa, that's 4. And then they get Ramoth Gilad, another city of refuge, Machanayim, Cheshbon, and Yazor. All the towns that the Merarites got were 12. All in all, the Levites had 48 towns all across Israel.
Wow.
So again, 48 of the famous cities, the famous towns belonging to the Levites dispersed across the land. And thus, those towns were assigned, every town with its surrounding pasture, and so it was with all those towns. The Lord gave to Israel the whole country, which went to the fathers. He would assign to them, they took possession of it, settled in it. The Lord gave them rest on all sides, just as he promised to their fathers in oath. No one stood before them. The Lord delivered the enemies in their hands. Not one of the good things which the Lord had promised was lacking. Everything was fulfilled. My dear friends, we've now finished a month-long exhaustive survey of Israel's geography. We've toured every corner. We've seen every tribe's portion. We've zoomed in by Google Earth. We've walked the roads. We've used Google Maps. We've looked at pictures. We study the text, and we see the way the land of Israel was distributed. 12 tribes. And now at last, the Levites too are settled in all of the cities. And it seems like the Jewish folks were otherwise working the land. Here you can take a look for one last time. Judah, Benjamin, Dan, Ephraim, Menashe, Yissachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Asher. Dan apparently has 2 pieces of land. Menashe, Gad, Reuben. 12 tribes. And all the main cities apparently are going to the Levites. Well,
But Rabbi, we won't remember all of this.
you don't need to remember all of it, but when next time when you're thinking about it, you say, oh, I know, I'll go to the book of Joshua and there we'll see a whole list.
Mhm.
It's not all about retaining all the information, but it's knowing where to look.
Right, we'll never retain it all.
No,
And that's not the goal, but just to get a picture, to get a sense and to see
Mhm.
everything's figured out.
How about Jerusalem?
Jerusalem, Reb Gedalia asked a good question. Where is Jerusalem? Does anybody recall why Jerusalem isn't mentioned?
Because they didn't have tribes there, is that right?
The tribes weren't there. The
Weren't
indigenous folks were still there for a few hundred years.
Until the
A few hundred.
later on.
Yes.
Mhm.
Now, I'll tell you what, chapter 22, which I'm not sure if we should start now because it's pretty late, but chapter 22 is going to show us how now that all of the tribes have their land,
Mhm.
all of the Levites have cities, there was a fighting force, 2.5 tribes that have been faithfully discharging their duty to take the land, and now they want to go back home. And so they do. And that's going to be the subject of chapter 22. So
Go
it's going to
back
be
across the
more of the
border.
drama, what happens when they come back home. Well, imagine you leave for 14 years. You leave your family for 14 years. So you've left your wives and kids and livestock. Now, does anything change about the way a person looks over 14 years?
Of course.
Of course,
You leave a little
Yeah.
kid, 14 years later, they're an adult.
that's right.
So we're going to see what happens when they come home and how that unfolds. That's going to happen, God willing, next week. Now, Sheila, are you traveling to see family this coming week?
yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow morning.
Well, wonderful. We'll have a
Yeah.
safe trip.
Thank you, I
Enjoy your
appreciate
family.
that.
And
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing you when you return,
Right.
or unless you want to join us on Zoom, you're more than welcome to do that while you're with them. We won't hold it against you.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, Lynn,
Okay,
Sheila,
Rabbi.
and in studio, we're joined with Gedalia and Reb Shammai.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
hello.
So thank you all for joining. I hope to see whoever's able to next week. And
Thank
listen,
you,
God
Rabbi.
willing, let's
Okay.
pray for
Yes.
sanity, health, and loads of good news.
That's right. That's all we ask
Thank
for.
you.
Much more to ask for, right?
Right.
All
Have a
right.
nice
Thank
summer,
you.
Lynn.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Nice seeing you all.